Hi, boys and girls. It's Mrs. Kemp. And this week in writing, we're going to switch it up a little bit. The past 2 weeks, we've been writing personal narratives, which are stories that have happened to us. We're just writing about things that have happened in our lives. And we're going to switch that a little bit. We're still going to be doing narratives, which are stories, but these are going to be fictional narratives, which mean they did not happen to you. They are made up stories. So a fictional narrative, like I just said, it's a story. So that means it's not something that has actually happened. It needs to be sequenced in order. It needs to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and you have to write it in the order that makes sense. So what I mean by that is when we are reading a fictional story, like a book that's fiction, we have to read it from the beginning to the end. It wouldn't make any sense if we opened the book right in the middle and started reading from there and then read to the end and then read the beginning last. That wouldn't make any sense. You can kind of do that in nonfiction books, in a lot of them. It doesn't really matter where you start because they're giving information. But this is a fictional narrative, so we need to make sure that we kind of have it planned out to write it in a specific order, and that's the only order that it will make sense in. This is not a personal narrative, so it's not something that has happened to you. But like a personal narrative, you have to answer a lot of questions with your writing. Who, what, where, when, and how. So fictional narratives can be one of two things. They can be realistic fiction, which is something that didn't happen to you but could happen to you, like finding a frog in your backyard, or like baking a pie. Those are things that maybe you haven't done but could actually happen. Fictional narratives can also be fantasy or make-believe stories. So you can have talking animals in them. You can have princes and princesses. You can have unicorns and fairies and dragons and dinosaurs. Pretty much anything you can think of can be in a fictional narrative because it is not real. So you can get as creative as you want to when you are writing a fictional narrative. I also have this little chart over here. Fictional narratives have to have all of these different pieces to them. Just like any story that we would read in a book has all of these. When you're writing a story, we want you to have all of these things as well. And they're characters, setting, which is the time and place where it happens, problem, and with every problem, I'm going to scoot over to this one. There's a solution always at the end. And then key events, the main important things that happen in the story. Okay, so I'm going to write a fictional narrative, and I asked some of my kids in my class on one of my check-in surveys from last week. I asked them for topics because I knew I was going to be writing some fictional narratives for you all this week. And so one of my friends said they wanted me to write about unicorns. So I'm going to write this story about unicorns. So obviously, if it's about unicorns, it is going to be a fictional narrative. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start. Now, I want to kind of start with something that catches people's attention. So I'm going to start with Crash. And then I'm going to name my unicorn. My unicorn's name is going to be Pixie. Pixie looked up and saw I'm going to try to think of something. So this one's definitely going to be more of a fantasy or a make-believe story. Crash. Pixie looked up and saw a flying car had crashed into her favorite tree. Okay. So this is my beginning. I've already introduced my, I'm going to say Pixie the unicorn. So she's my character. And I'm starting to tell what my problem is. If a car crashes into something, that's a problem. And I can sort of tell what my setting is already, because if it's a tree, then they're probably outside. So I'm going to kind of clear that up a little more in my next sentence. She looked up and saw her friend Daffodil. I think that's how you spell daffodil. Oh, maybe it's not. Let's see. Oh, 2 F's. There we go. Daffodil. Crying in the car. She flew up from the ground up to the tree to help her friend. So my problem is that Daffodil crashed her car and is crying. Pixie's trying to help. And we can tell that they're outside. You know, I'm going to change this so you can tell even more. I'm going to say from the grass. She flew from the grass up to the tree to help her friend. Daffodil couldn't open the door because it was stuck. It must have broken in from the crash. Luckily, Pixie is a magical unicorn. She shook her tail in a circle and said abracadabra. Then the door, and I'm running out of room, so I'm going to make my words a little smaller here. There we go. Then the door opened immediately. At last, Daffodil could get out of the car. Pixie lifted her up and flew down to the ground. They had a picnic. In the grass. All right, so this is my fictional narrative about unicorns. Crash! Pixie the unicorn looked up and saw a flying car had crashed into her favorite tree. She looked up and saw her friend Daffodil crying in the car. She flew from the grass up to the tree to help her friend. Daffodil couldn't open the door because it was stuck. It must have broken from the crash. Luckily, Pixie is a magical unicorn. She shook her tail in a circle and said abracadabra. Then the door opened immediately. At last, Daffodil could get out of the car. Pixie lifted her up and flew down to the ground. I'm going to say then they had a picnic in the grass. And sometimes write the end at the end of your story. All right, so that is my fictional narrative. I have two characters. I have Daffodil and Pixie. What happened was Pixie helped to save Daffodil to help to get her out of the car after it crashed into the tree. Um, the where it was, they were outside. Part of it was in the tree, and sometimes they were in the grass. And then the when. Ooh, I didn't answer the when. So let's see. I'm going to add that right to the beginning. One sunny spring morning, Pixie heard a loud crash. There we go. So my when was one sunny spring morning. Okay. My problem was that Daffodil crashed into the tree and couldn't get out of the car. And my solution was that Pixie had some magical powers and she was able to use her tail to open the car door to let Daffodil out. So when you go on to Seesaw today, you are going to look for each of those things: your character's problem, solution, setting, and main events. Oh, I forgot to say the main events, so I'll say them now. The main event at the beginning was that Daffodil's car crashed into the tree. The main event in the middle was that Pixie flew up and used her magic to open the car. And then the main event at the end was that she got Daffodil out of the car and brought her back down to the ground to be safe. So when you go on to Seesaw, you are going to have to pick out characters, setting, problem, solution, and main events from another narrative. So go ahead and do that. I can't wait to see all of your hard work.